Breaking. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing the most devastating political crisis of his career. Just 1 year after his landslide victory, his government is crashing in real time, and what's happening next has sent shockwaves across the entire United Kingdom. Reform UK is dominating the polls. Immigration protests are erupting in every major city, and Starmer's own party members are abandoning him in droves. This isn't just politics anymore. This is a complete government meltdown that will reshape British politics forever. If you want to stay ahead of stories like this that change everything, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to see will blow your mind. Here's what sparked the biggest UK political earthquake in decades. 3 months ago, Starmer thought he had the perfect solution to his immigration crisis. With Reform UK surging in the polls and Nigel Farage breathing down his neck, the Prime Minister made a fateful decision.
Think about it. When was the last time that you heard Nigel Farage say anything positive about Britain's future? He can't. He doesn't like Britain, doesn't believe in Britain, wants you to doubt it just as much as he does. So he resorts to grievance. They all do. They want to turn this country, this proud, self-reliant country, into a competition of victims.
He would out-tough the populists at their own game. His strategy was brutal and simple. Steal reform's thunder by adopting their hardline immigration policies. But what happened next has backfired so spectacularly that even his closest allies are calling it political suicide. Starmer's immigration crackdown reads like something straight out of Farage's playbook. Mandatory digital identity cards for every working adult in Britain. Extensions of citizenship waiting periods from 5 to 10 years. Complete elimination of family reunification for asylum seekers. Higher English language requirements across the board. The closure of care worker visa routes to overseas recruitment. These aren't moderate labor policies anymore.
Why is it a racist policy to deport people who are legally living here if they don't meet high income and English language requirements? Many people would think that policy is reasonable, not racist. So why have you described it as racist?
Because these are people who are lawfully here, who've contributed to our society. They're working in our NHS, working in our schools. They're our neighbours. They have contributed and built their lives in this country.
And some can stay, but some might go.
But this goes to the heart of who we are as a country.
Okay.
I want to serve the whole of this country, this beautiful, tolerant, diverse country. The alternative, this toxic division, would tear apart who we are as a country, and that's why it's a really fundamental issue.
Do you think that he is caught in racist with this policy?
Well, look, I'm not going to start bandying.
Well, you called it a racist
policy. The policy.
So is he caught in racist with it?
I think the policy is racist. I think it's immoral, and I think I'll tell you, I've had so much sort of incoming communications about this. People from minorities in this country who feel more scared now than they've felt for years. It's sent a shiver down their throat. It has said to communities who thought they were part of what it is to be British that somehow they're not British. I think that's a very dangerous place for us to go as a country, and it goes against everything that I believe.
These are the kind of measures that would make even conservative hardliners blush. But here's the devastating truth that's destroying Starmer's credibility. The British public isn't buying it. Despite adopting Reform's entire immigration agenda, Labour is still polling at just 17% trust on immigration issues. Meanwhile, Reform UK under Nigel Farage commands 28% trust on the same issue.
Of beating us on our arguments. And as a result, the Prime Minister has decided to descend into the gutter, and all of his cabinet with him. Let us be clear. Reform want illegal migrants deported from our country, and as I speak, a further 400 have crossed the English Channel today. Reform want the benefit system to be for UK citizens, for British citizens only, not for foreign-born nationals. Reform want foreign criminals removed from our country ASAP. Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, Reform supporters, Reform voters, Reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister, and his cabinet all racists. Now, I don't normally worry about abuse being thrown at me. I've got kind of used to it over the course of the last few years. But to accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, this language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
That's not just a political failure. That's a complete credibility collapse that exposes Starmer as a desperate politician willing to abandon every principle for a few polling points. The numbers tell a story of absolute political catastrophe. Reform UK has surged to first place in national polling for the first time in British political history. 25% of voters now back Farage's party, compared to just 24% for Labour and 21% for the Conservatives. This represents a complete reversal of fortune from Labour's landslide victory just over a year ago. Starmer has managed to lose more support in 12 months than most prime ministers lose in an entire term. But the immigration crackdown was just the beginning of Starmer's political nightmare. His decision to introduce mandatory digital identity cards has triggered the biggest civil liberties backlash in modern British history. Over 2 million people have signed petitions opposing the scheme.
Here it is.
We can all see these snake oil merchants on the right, on the left, but be in no doubt conference, none of them have any interest in national renewal, because decline is good for their business. I mean, think about it. When was the last time that you heard Nigel Farage say anything positive about Britain's future? He can't. He doesn't like Britain, doesn't believe in Britain, wants you to doubt it just as much as he does.
Just a point on that, Isabel, before I ask you to respond on the specifics. He talked about snake oil merchants on the left and the right. Who might he be referring to on the left?
Slight at so-called fruit and nut, Zara Sultana.
That's more signatures than any political petition in British history, surpassing even calls for a fresh general election. The opposition is bipartisan and brutal, with everyone from Jeremy Corbyn to Nigel Farage condemning the plan as authoritarian overreach.
A further 400 have crossed the English Channel today. Reform want the benefit system to be for UK citizens, for British citizens only, not for foreign-born nationals. Reform want foreign criminals removed from our country ASAP. Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, reform supporters, reform voters, reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists. Now, I don't normally worry about abuse being thrown at me. I've got kind of used to it over the course of the last few years. But to accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, this language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
The digital ID controversy reveals everything wrong with Starmer's political instincts. Britain has a deep cultural resistance to identity cards, dating back to wartime rationing and post-war concerns about government surveillance. Every previous attempt to introduce them has failed spectacularly. Yet Starmer somehow convinced himself that mandatory digital IDs would solve his immigration problems. Instead, they've created a new front in the war against his leadership, with civil liberties groups, opposition parties, and millions of ordinary citizens united in opposition. The political earthquake is accelerating daily. Labour MPs are privately expressing panic about their prospects at the next election. Cabinet meetings have devolved into damage control sessions as ministers struggle to defend policies that are polling worse than toxic waste. Senior party figures are quietly distancing themselves from Starmer's leadership, with some suggesting he should consider stepping down for the good of the party. The man who promised to restore competent government to Britain is presiding over one of the most chaotic administrations in living memory.
I used to think the Prime Minister was a decent man, somebody that I could talk to and chat to. We might disagree on worldview, but I thought he was a profoundly decent human being. I am completely shocked at his behaviour. I hope when he wakes up tomorrow morning, he feels ashamed of what he has done. This is a desperate last throw of the dice from a Prime Minister who's in deep trouble, a Prime Minister who can't even command the support of half of his own party. But I'm sorry to say, I now believe that he is unfit to be the Prime Minister of our country.
Reform UK's rise represents more than just political opposition. It's a fundamental realignment of British politics that threatens to destroy the traditional two-party system. Nigel Farage has successfully positioned himself as the voice of ordinary British voters who feel abandoned by both Labour and Conservative establishments. His message is simple and devastating. The political class has failed you on immigration, failed you on sovereignty, and failed you on basic competence. Only reform offers real change. The latest polling projections paint a picture of complete Labour collapse. If an election were held tomorrow, Reform UK would win 311 seats, just 15 short of an outright majority. Labour would crash to just 144 seats, losing 267 constituencies from their current position. That would represent the worst electoral defeat in Labour Party history, worse even than their catastrophic losses in the 1930s and 1980s. The social media response tells the real story of public opinion. Immigration videos contrasting Starmer's tough rhetoric with continued record arrivals have gone viral across every platform. The hashtag Labour Lies has been trending for weeks, with millions of posts documenting the gap between Starmer's promises and his delivery. Professional content creators are producing devastating split-screen videos, showing Starmer's pre-election promises alongside his current policies. The visual contrast is so damaging that even mainstream news outlets are being forced to cover the contradiction. Inside Westminster, the panic is palpable. Labour MPs in marginal constituencies are receiving unprecedented numbers of angry letters from constituents. Local party meetings have turned into shouting matches as activists demand explanations for policies that contradict everything Labour claimed to stand for. The party's traditional base of trade unionists, public sector workers, and progressive voters feels completely betrayed by Starmer's rightward lurch. Meanwhile, the voters he's trying to win over with tough immigration policies are flocking to reform in record numbers. The international fallout is equally devastating. European Union officials are privately questioning whether Britain has lost its political compass under Starmer's leadership. The mandatory digital ID scheme has drawn comparisons to authoritarian regimes, damaging Britain's reputation as a beacon of civil liberties. Immigration rights organizations across Europe are condemning Starmer's policies as a betrayal of human rights principles.
It's been an extraordinary conference. I've been watching party conferences for half a century. Never before have I seen one name so dominate a conference. And the remarkable thing is, it's somebody that isn't even a member of the Labour Party. Yes, it's me, Nigel Farage. It has been obsessive. Whether it's the Home Secretary, whether it's the Health Secretary, it is a constant attack on me and what I stand for and what we as Reform UK, a party that has led the opinion polls now for over 100 polls. It's an attack on everything that we stand for and believe in. What I've learnt this week is that the government are incapable of beating us on our arguments.
The Prime Minister, who promised to restore Britain's international standing, is instead making the country a pariah among liberal democracies. Starmer's desperation is becoming increasingly obvious to everyone watching British politics. His recent speech, warning that Britain risks becoming an island of strangers, used language more commonly associated with far-right politicians than center-left prime ministers. The transformation is so complete that even his own MPs are struggling to recognize the man they elected as leader. The politician who once championed human rights as a barrister is now implementing policies that human rights organizations describe as cruel and counterproductive. The economic consequences are mounting alongside the political costs. Business groups are warning that the digital ID scheme will cost billions to implement while achieving nothing meaningful in terms of immigration control. Small businesses are pressing concerns about the bureaucratic burden of mandatory identity checks. The tourism industry is worried about the impact on international visitors. Meanwhile, the tech sector is questioning whether Britain's digital infrastructure can handle such an ambitious and poorly planned scheme. But perhaps the most damaging aspect of Starmer's crisis is the complete collapse of his moral authority. This is a man who spent years criticizing conservative immigration policies as inhumane and ineffective. Now he's implementing measures that are even harsher while achieving even worse results. The hypocrisy is so blatant that even sympathetic commentators are struggling to defend him. When your own supporters can't explain your policies, you've lost the fundamental requirement for political leadership.
Donald Trump said under Sadiq Khan, London is being driven towards Sharia law, is it?
No, of course it's not.
Okay.
That's nonsense.
Isn't it that racist as well?
Well, it's nonsense.
Isn't
It's
it racist to accuse a Muslim mayor of driving London to Sharia law?
I'm not going to start down the road of discussing whether things said by others are racist or not.
Well, you just discussed Nigel Farage having a racist policy, so you literally are discussing that.
I have been...
I mean, the guy's so stupid.
All credit to Beth.
Yeah.
She did well there, cornering him and exposing his absolute hypocrisy and frankly lies. I mean, the guy is just, he will say anything to anybody at the turn of a moment. And this is our Prime Minister. I mean, it's serious.
The Reform UK surge represents more than just protest votes. Polling data shows that Farage's party is attracting voters across traditional party lines, from working-class Labour supporters to middle-class Conservatives. The common thread is a belief that the established parties have failed to address legitimate concerns about immigration, sovereignty, and national identity. Reform's message of controlled immigration, restored sovereignty, and competent government is resonating with voters who feel abandoned by decades of political failure. Starmer's response to the crisis has been to double down on policies that are clearly failing. Rather than acknowledging the problems with his immigration strategy, he's announcing even tougher measures that polls show are even less popular. Rather than listening to the 2 million people opposing digital IDs, he's pressing ahead with implementation. This isn't leadership, this is the behavior of a politician who has completely lost touch with public opinion and democratic accountability. The breaking point came during Prime Minister's questions when Conservative MP Sarah Henderson confronted Starmer with devastating statistics about his policy failures. Immigration has continued rising despite his crackdown. Public trust in his government has collapsed to historic lows. Reform UK is leading in constituencies that Labour has held for generations. Starmer's response was a series of pre-written talking points that convinced nobody and satisfied no one. For several agonizing minutes, the Prime Minister looked like a man who had completely lost control of both his policies and his political narrative.
Work together to deliver for Britain.
Well, welcome back to Liverpool, where Keir Starmer has been on the podium addressing the Labour Party conference. To discuss how his speech went down, I'm joined now by Labour MP John McDonnell, who was Jeremy Corbyn's Shadow Chancellor when he ran the party, and he's been recently let back into the Parliamentary Labour Party after being suspended for voting against the party whip. And Matthew Doyle helped run Labour's PR machine when Tony Blair was PM. He became Downing Street Director of Communications for Keir Starmer after last year's election and left in March of this year. He is thus the longest serving of the 4 people who have had that role so far in the last 14 months.
Longevity for you.
John McDonnell, you are apparently one of the snake oil merchants because you're in favour of a wealth tax.
I most probably am then, aren't I, really? If you look at my track record on the issues I've been in favour of since we've been elected, I did warn them about winter fuel allowance and they had to change that. I warned them about disability benefits, they had to pull back on that. I warned them about the 2-child limit, and I'm told this evening that they're going to reverse that in some form anyway. So Maybe they should listen to some of us at some stage.
How long do you think you're going to stay in the Parliamentary Party?
My wife has bet me 8 hours, but I think I'll be there for a while.
So you're just ahead of that at the moment. I mean, Matthew Doyle, why pick a fight with the left when you don't you need to unite the left?
I think you saw a party today that is united in terms.
Social media groups organizing against Starmer's policies have gained hundreds of thousands of members in just weeks. They're coordinating boycotts, organizing protests, and creating viral content that reaches millions of people daily. The government's attempts to control the narrative are failing because the content is so emotionally powerful and factually devastating. When ordinary citizens are producing more compelling political commentary than professional spin doctors, you know the government has lost the information war. The question facing Britain now isn't whether Starmer can survive this crisis. Political analysts across the spectrum agree that his leadership is effectively finished. The only questions are how long his government can continue functioning and whether Labour can find a replacement before the party suffers permanent damage. The man who promised to bring stability and competence to British politics has instead delivered chaos, confusion, and the rise of populist forces that threaten to reshape the entire political system. This crisis will be studied for decades as a textbook example of political miscalculation and leadership failure. Starmer's attempt to outflank Reform UK on immigration has instead legitimized their arguments while destroying his own credibility. His digital ID scheme has united opposition forces across the political spectrum while solving none of the problems it was supposed to address. The result is a government that satisfies nobody, commands no respect, and faces certain electoral defeat. Reform UK's rise represents the most significant political realignment in Britain since the rise of the Labour Party itself over a century ago. Nigel Farage has successfully tapped into decades of frustration with political establishments that promise change but deliver continuity. His party's success isn't just about immigration or sovereignty. It's about competence, accountability, and the fundamental question of whether democratic politicians can be trusted to keep their promises to voters. At the center of this political earthquake stands Keir Starmer, a man who looks increasingly isolated, increasingly desperate, and increasingly finished. His transformation from human rights lawyer to authoritarian prime minister represents one of the most dramatic political reversals in modern British history. The policies he's implementing contradict everything he once claimed to believe. The voters he's trying to win are flocking to his opponents. The supporters he once counted on feel completely betrayed. What do you think? Has Starmer's attempt to steal Reform's policies backfired so badly that it's destroyed his political career? Is this the end of Labour as we know it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because this story is far from over. And if this political earthquake shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to understand what's really happening in British politics right now. The mainstream media won't tell you the full truth about Starmer's collapse, but we will.